The Shift podcast, perspective and our power to change, invites us to expand our lives by changing the lens we see through. Is something different calling you? Do you ever ask yourself, is this all there is? Or have you forgotten why you're even here? Trish and Diane create insightful and empowering conversations about connecting the self, soul, nature, and community. Navigating life by choice rather than circumstance is how we make the shift to expand our humanity. The shift starts now.
Hello, welcome everyone to the Shift podcast, Perspective and Our Power to Change. We are part of the Cornelia Stephanie Media Group on the Transformation Talk Radio Network. I'm Trish Campbell, your co-host, along with my good friend Diane McClay. And we invite you into episode 17, which we're talking about leaning into our resistance. And as we always do, I want to acknowledge where we've been, the land on which we settle. And for myself, I'm coming to you from Mississauga, Ontario, Canada. And those sacred lands are the Mississauga of the Credit First Nation, the Haudenosaunee, the Huron-Wendat, the Anishinaabe, and the Ojibwe Chippewa. And also honoring the lands where Diane is. You're in Washington State on the Oregon-Washington border. Would you like to name where you're coming from, the sacred lands there?
Yes, definitely. Thank you. And that's important. The sacred lands of the people that came before me, that I get to enjoy their view of the river, the Columbia River. That would be the Confederated Tribes of the Warm Springs, Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde, the Nez Perce, the Umatilla, and there are several bands and tribes of people. They're not federally recognized. And I think it's important to realize that just because they don't have a name in the federal white government that has established territories, I think it's important to remember that those people that are unnamed are just as important to call in and to honor as those that are named.
Yes, thank you for saying that. And we honor this not just in our show, but in our day-to-day. And we're always looking for ways to dig a little deeper. And that's what we're here to do on the Shift, always to find new perspectives, look beneath the surface, not just accept the status quo. And we're really going to pick up from our last episode where we were talking about tuning into our natural intelligence. And this week we're talking about resistance. That's such a broad topic, so we can go so many ways with this. But I mean, the resistance is what I've been feeling, collective resistance, and I'm speaking to like why we have a resistance to that, why we tell ourselves stories that we can't make the time to connect with nature. For example, like last time we invited people to increase their connectivity to nature, and not just increase it, but then also take a look and pay attention at what's around them and really see if there's some sort of unspoken communication from everything around us that we can be receiving, and we're all a part of that. So that's really
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to walk over you. One of our listeners actually sent me a picture. They had picked up a book about kind of self-healing and being in tune with the self. And there was a picture of an oak leaf. So that somebody had put an oak leaf in the back of the book. So when one of our listeners had actually opened up the book, boom, nature literally fell out, landed in their hands. And I just got to thank you for the reminder to connect. It could literally be that simple, where you pick up a leaf today, stick it in one of your favorite books or your journals, and then, a day, a month, a week, whatever, nature will present itself to you. I thought that was kind of cool.
That is cool. I love that. And I mean, there's so much that I mean, we can go so many directions with this, but I just feel like there's this resistance around taking a closer look at connecting with ourselves. And I think a lot of people are so used to having something to turn to distract. And one of the things I was sharing on social media this week, and just was really in my awareness this week, was around paying attention. And we talk about that a lot here on our show, and it really is healing to pay attention. And I'm talking about like to everything. We stop, we're so busy going through our day and going to the next thing that we don't always pay attention to what's right in front of us and the beauty of life that's right in front of us. And I think when we do that, we stop, and it's almost like a recharge for our soul, because we're taking a moment to acknowledge what's around us instead of just moving on to the next task and avoiding that. And that speaks to the bigger picture of us, of collectively speaking, of avoiding uncomfortable things, or things that were not, even silence for people, even to stop for a moment, is sometimes uncomfortable. So there's resistance in that. And what is that about? Like,
well, I want to chime in here because you're touching on a couple of things that are happening in my world right away. First of all, I think paying attention, I think that's the first step to, like, before you can even break down resistance, you have to pay attention to what's happening. And if you don't consciously look or listen or feel or smell, or in some cases taste, then there's already an inherent resistance that's happening, because we're not fully engaging in our surroundings, our community, to nature with our whole self. We're only doing it with part of ourself. I have dogs. I have a lab and I have a black shepherd. And I've been taking them for walks in different places. And yesterday we went for probably an hour and a half long walk. And it was really probably only a half a mile, but it was an hour and a half because they stopped and they looked and smelled everything. Right. And I have this lesson, my story is that, dogs, labs especially, find really good things to roll in. And as I was watching my dogs, I was looking for information from them. If their ears perk up a certain way, there might be another dog around me that I need to be aware of. But the lab, she stops, she smells something. She looks at the ground, the ears go up, the tail and the butt kind of start to wag. And then she sort of cocks her head a little bit like, do I want to roll in that? I think I want to roll in that. I'm going to roll in that. Right. So it wasn't instantaneous that there's this thing and all of a sudden she flopped down and started rolling. Well, the lesson that was so beautiful for me, because I realized that in that moment, I was attentive to every single clue that was coming towards me, the information that was coming very naturally from my dog. Now, the first thing I did is I looked at the ground to see if it's like something really nasty, like, do I want this in the car with me for the next hour? And I didn't see anything that I needed to prevent the roll, right? So I allowed the roll to happen. But to me, I think that's a really great metaphor for what we're asking our listeners to do, which is like, look, stop, pay attention, use your senses, assess, analyze, bring it into you in whatever way. You don't have to roll in anything, and I would encourage you not to, but the essence of how happy my dog was when she discovered something, she connected to something, and she allowed it to be a part of her journey. By being attentive to that, I got to connect to nature in a completely different way.
Right. I love that. There's so many things you said there with, like, it speaks to the natural intelligence that we were talking about last time on our show, where your dog just instinctively like picked up on something, and like, all the senses tune in. And we have that ability as well. We just turn that off so we can get to the next thing, because we've been conditioned to be productive and to just to not pay attention to our senses, especially like I'm thinking of emotion. So whatever emotion comes up, a lot of times it's not the right place. And it's like, but we're human and our emotions come and go without us having any say in that sometimes. And so it's this whole idea of resistance is something that is so ingrained in us to want to, I think part of what it is about like connecting with nature is that it opens us up to vulnerability, to have to feel. and we're not comfortable there. And something else you said was about, you said parts of ourselves, like we're walking around with parts of ourselves. And I think that is the key right there or the invitation to lean into our resistance, because, and I keep thinking of the quote that we shared last time, and it's kind of, we brought that into this conversation because this is what it's all about. And your quote from your book, Dreaming Big, Being Bold, that sums it all up, is we need to align who we are with what we believe and what we value to function authentically with our whole self. We can have balance and harmony when all the pieces of the self are attended to. And I think it's worth repeating that, because even though we talked about that the last time, this is something that's, I think it's come up so much. I mean, for myself personally, in my life, in my experience, and I know you too, like working in, you were working in a government agency. I was in the corporate world, and a lot of people who are in those types of jobs where we're in a concrete building, for the majority of our day, and we're not in our natural inherent state. And so not only that, but we've been conditioned to turn off everything that's human about us. And I think one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this was to talk about I was questioning myself, what is the resistance there? Like, what is that all about? And why, in order for us to shift collectively, we always say, like, we have to do that work individually. And for me, I've been doing a lot of over the years, coming back to connecting with everything that's natural within me. It all starts weird. I was also talking about this yesterday, connecting with our soul. And our soul is that's the channel to spirit, that's a channel to the light, the life that is all around us in nature and that we are a part of. And so, but there's this, our society is operating detached from that. And so, it's kind of going into the resistance and kind of dissecting that to find out what the root of that is. And I think, one of the things is it's attached to fear and fear of the unknown. But I don't know. I've just been thinking a lot about that and how we can break that apart and heal that individually and collectively.
I'm sorry. I want to call out too that resistance isn't bad. Like in electricity, we have to have resistance in order for the current to flow and to give us the output that we need. Resistance is, what tends to hold us back. So the first part, I think, is recognizing, where do we feel stifled? Where do we feel like we're not growing? Where do we feel like we want more? As soon as we understand, I say in my book, when you opt for change, you may not know where you're going, but you have to trust that you cannot stay where you are.
Right.
So I think the first step comes back to awareness. We say that over and over and over again. I think the next step is when we're going about our day, we have awareness, and then we have paying attention. And then I think we have to assess. And I feel like I'm building an A list here, right? So we have to have awareness, and then we have to be attentive, and then we have to apply. What is the information telling us, and how can we change? Now, every time you ask why or how, there's a deeper layer of resistance. And most therapists will tell you that if you get to the fourth or fifth layer, that's when the question gets really tough, because we have to get real. The first three are easy, right? At the fourth layer, it starts to be like, wow, I really have to dig in deep. And I think fear is one resistance. I think the phrase, it's easy, is another piece of resistance. I have a book in my bookshelf my niece gave me. It's called Life Without Plastic. And I am making a conscious effort to reduce the single plastic stream in my household. But when you think about your normal everyday products that you buy at the store, the way you normally shop, our culture is framed. You cannot get away from plastic. You just, you can, but it takes a big commitment. Do I want to buy the oranges that are in the plastic nylon bag because it's easy to grab and I just throw it in my cart? Or do I go to a different section, maybe the organic section, and I bring my own cloth bag and I pick 5 oranges up? And that's a choice that I have to make. But I'm making it because I had awareness, I had attention, and then I apply, and that goes to the integration piece. Right. So I think the fact that our culture has built a concept around a lot of things being easy, it's also easy to use that as an excuse. Oh, I can't touch nature today because I don't have the right equipment. I don't have the knowledge. I don't have a special place to go. I don't have, I don't know the wildflowers in Latin. I think that the easy part is one of the first places of resistance that we have to tackle.
Yeah. And these are the stories that I'm talking about that we tell ourselves to feel better about our not being in alignment with who we are naturally, because it is our nature to want to be in nature. That is home, essentially. But because we're so disconnected from it, it doesn't feel like it sometimes for a lot of people. I mean, for myself, it does, because I've gotten reconnected with that. And I wasn't always, there was a lot of years of my life where I didn't have that connection. It wasn't until, the last few, probably 5 or 6 years, that I've gradually, came back there. But there's so many different avenues we can talk about. Like you said, it's interesting because I was going to bring in to the conversation, and it all kind of ties in, but like the last couple years with the pandemic, and we've been, we saw a shift collectively of people working from home immediately, where there's been resistance around that for years. And, when things shut down, people had to immediately start working from home. And then what I witnessed happening was people becoming maybe a little bit happier because they had more balance in their life, because they could show up in their pajama bottoms on the bottom and this on the top. I do have on actual pants. But the other side of that too is where we were collectively making, because we were each making I feel like a lot of people started to make good choices around, or better choices around, sustainability. And like you said, the single-use plastic, or pick something that, people, start with one thing, and we started to reduce our footprint. And then when COVID hit, a lot of that kind of got thrown out the window because of the, the sanitary reasons or whatever, like all the, single-use plastic came, and then people were buying bottles and bottles of water and all of that, everything was kind of thrown out the window. So it's almost like it's almost like it happens on a collective level, like it does as individuals, or I've experienced that with myself, of resisting something, kind of dipping my toes into it and living that way for a while, and then something happens, and then I'm right back to what's comfortable, because it's so ingrained in my way of being or whatever. So I think right now I'm also, I touched on that, people working from home, and now that the pandemic is kind of shifting into a new era of that, there's a lot of talk about going back to the office full time, and or a hybrid, of work from home and office. And there's resistance around that. And the resistance is, I think, valid, because people have realized that their humanity was kind of restored in their way of being in their role in their job. Whereas when you're in a building that's, a square building that's concrete or whatever, and you're like, this isn't where I don't feel good. I mean, think about it. You're not, if you're in a concrete building versus somewhere in nature, you're going to obviously, they're two different sensations, even if you're not aware of it.
Well, I want to chime in there real quick, if I can.
Yeah.
Because there's a way, both sides of the coin are equally valuable. We need to have, for our economy to run, we have to have businesses, they have to have office buildings and whatnot. But if you look at my office, within an arm's reach, I have pieces of nature. The wood on the back of my wall, which have the 2 words choice and courage. Those are pieces of cedar that came from the forest, and I did some wood burning. I have turkey feathers in a vase. I have, there's a bird's nest that literally I was out walking one day, and this just showed up. I walked one way and then it wasn't there. And when I came back, it was literally sitting right there in front of me. And I kind of asked permission to take it, because I felt like it was a piece of information that the muses gave me to write about. There's so much that just by having a prop handy to journal about or write about, I can write about the construction of the nest, or I can write about the fibers or the interwovenness, or, how nature itself integrated the components to build a home. So I feel like, if you're in a concrete building, this is a turkey feather. And I do this because there are days and times that I can't get to where I want to go. And the thing is by bringing a small piece in, you should see how many rocks I have in my house.
Yeah.
Right? Sometimes I pick a rock up and it just feels really good in my hand. And, my wife will say, what are you going to do with that? I'll say, I don't know. Is it going to go in my pocket? Because it makes me happy. So that's a way of casually starting to reduce our resistance. I think the step is literally you reduce resistance by having awareness and you start to integrate.
Right. And that's, so you have the resistance, you have the awareness of it, and then you kind of process through that, and then you start to apply, like you said, but you're kind of making the opposite point of what I was trying to make, but that's all good. That's why we're here. And I love that. My point was that, like, the resistance around, we've had a sense of humanity being brought back in, and I feel like it's uncomfortable for leaders in corporations, let's just say, and that's a blanket statement maybe, but it's I feel like, the management teams want their teams back, and the employees are like, well, I'm just as productive, if not more, if I'm not on the highway for 4 hours a day or 2 hours a day, or drive it to and from work. And I can have that work-life balance with, I have kids or whatever. So I think that where I was going with that was that there's almost a resistance, because being in our human nature, like combining the two of like our humanity and business, just like the message of love me, I want to take that into the corporate world, because I think that love is needed in that space and healing is needed. But that was the example I wanted to kind of bring into it, that it was where there's resistance. We see that it can work. We're forced to do it regardless of the resistance. And then there's almost, but the resistance was there hovering, waiting for the opportunity to pop back up again. So
you're saying there was resistance to allowing people to have their own sense of humanity and their own sense of work balance. But when we were forced to do it, the acceptance happened. Yes. But then resistance was waiting in the wings, waiting to pounce and pull us back into, we don't really want that humanity. We don't need that work balance because we did fine before. One of the things that drives me crazy about the whole pandemic is everybody who says, well, I want to go back to the old normal.
Right.
There isn't an old normal.
Exactly.
This thing shifted our world, and it shifted it. There's some good things and there's some bad things. Mm-hmm. But I always say with awareness, you cannot, once you have awareness, you cannot go back to the place of not having awareness.
Right.
And what I think I'm hearing you say is that our structure, our corporate structure, our societal structure is still anchored in that resistance. They still want to pull us back in. And part of our job and our vision for humanity is to actually utilize resistance to our benefit, resist the old pull and create a new pull. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, that's what you're hearing. That's what I'm saying. You're picking up what I'm putting down.
Nice. I like it when that happens.
But, it's almost like as you're talking, I'm thinking of like when you have the end of a relationship, for example, and you miss that relationship and you miss that person, and you almost want to, even if it wasn't good for you, and you almost want to be back in that relationship just because it feels better than being in a place where you don't really know what it feels like to be in that more open space. So I feel like that is where the resistance is. Like, it's clinging to what we know, and like you said, we're not going back. Like, what's behind us is behind us. And like once you're on this journey of awakening or connecting to your soul, you don't go back to a place of not connecting once that channel is open. And so just like once that awareness channel is open, you can't undo that. You can't go back to not knowing that. So, I mean, what
Giving
does
you
that
permission is the bottom line. Trish and I, with Power of Perspective, and where the power to change starts with you and it starts with us, we're giving you permission to step into those things that make you a little uncomfortable, to step into something that's a little different, to change your view, change your perspective, and change your actions based on that.
Right. And it's now is the time. I think this is the most like we're in the middle of change, like significant change in history right now. Like we'll look back and at this time. And so there is no reason why we can't, like, individually and collectively, like, go after everything we've always wanted to do and make the world that we want to make. And it starts with us, doing taking our individual actions. Like you said, find something. And I wrote down, like, do something. It's like we have that awareness and take that and apply it to something. Really be intentional with the time that we're in. And I kind of lost my train of thought, where I was going with that. But
well, let me pick up what you're throwing
okay.
down. The whole point is do something.
Yes.
Do something. Don't keep doing it the same way you've been doing it because it's easy. Do something different. And one way you can do something different is in the Cornelia Stephanie Media Group app, which is soon to be called the New House with Cornelia Stephanie Media, is you can go there and you can answer the universal question in your own private journal after you download the app and you log in to become a member to get all the juicy stuff. That is one action you can take to start doing something. Another action is you can share with us. You can contact us through the app and tell us the thing that you want to do. And we'll be here to support you to help you get there.
Yeah, it starts with having that universal question is an invitation to connect with yourself and have that conversation with your soul and really, have everything, kind of come up in your intuition. It will just happen. You will see pardon?
You have to make a new habit of it.
You have to make a new habit of it. And you will see that shift happening, on the other side of that. So, like Diane said, you can find us both in the KS Media Group app, which is now the New House, and we invite you to go check it out. And if you're somebody who is a coach like ourselves, an entrepreneur, somebody doing something to make positive impact in the world, come and check us out and join us in this movement.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll close this out because, as always, our time always flies by when we have these conversations about change and shifting and awareness. We want you to stay tuned to the next show on Transformation Talk Radio and in the Cornelia Stephanie Media Group. That's Stories that Inspire Hope with our founder, Cornelia Stephanie. After that is Dance to Heal with Jenny C. Cohen, and then Dr. Brooke Sheehan is coming on. Fridays are a great way to start taking action and change your life. Remember, the shift starts with you, and the choice starts now.
Thank you for listening to the Shift Podcast, where perspective and our power to change intersect. Slowing down to look at things from a different angle is necessary to effect positive change. You hold the power to transform yourself and your life. It is already inside you, and it's within reach. Clarity comes from awareness. Momentum comes from choice. Healing, growth, and transformation happen on the Shift Podcast, the first and third Fridays at 12:30 p.m. Pacific. For more information, go to invibe.ca or dianemcclay.com.